One of the questions I have for the board is, to what extent do you think the actual portfolio can reflect the changes? I know that is a matter for the investment committee, but what we do see is there is a lot of policy work being done by funds. There's a lot of funds signed up to initiatives, but when we look to where the capital is actually being allocated, we see very little evidence for money moving to help address some of these issues, whether it be from a risk point of view or an opportunity point of view. Would the board like to comment on their appetite for actually allocating capital to such investments?
Well, I think this is this board, and we could answer it two ways. We've got a mozza of money, huge amounts of money. So if we haven't been doing it, either we haven't had the right policies, or we've got very conservative internal investment management advice in terms of what we're doing. And if we're a small fund, we don't have, we're dependent on consultants and advice, and they're not twigged onto it, because fundamentally a lot of it comes down to there is will, but there is also resources and advice, I guess.
For me, when I think about it, I just think about, where opportunities sit along the risk and return curve. And you're really thinking, when you first think about this, you're thinking infrastructure. And it's the lumpiness of the assets and the lumpiness with which they come before you, and when you've actually got money to allocate and what's before you. So I don't know whether we haven't done the work. I haven't got any money to allocate, so I'm at home painting the house. So that's what I'm doing. But when you think about that, and you think about, well, how easily could you divest from something that you're in and get into something else in infrastructure? It's not. That's where the barrier sits to me. In other asset classes, I'm not aware of I certainly haven't done the work myself, and I'm not aware of enough work having been done for me to sort of be able to comment. But in infrastructure, you can look at, energy generation and, toll roads and those sorts of things and say, well, could you get out and get into something else? And it's what comes across your desk in the 6 months lead that you've got to put a lump of, 20 million or 40 million or 100 million or whatever you've got into an infrastructure investment. And so we do rely on our fund managers to bring some of that to us, and that's important. But yeah.
Well, I think it's really important not to confuse green credentials, of the investment with the entire risk spectrum, because that's far from the case. I mean, there are many very green assets which are very, very conservative assets compared to non-green assets. For example, I would much rather invest in a 100-year-old, and have actually, a 100-year-old run-of-river hydro outfit with a long contract for offtake of its electricity and a track record over 100 years, than to invest in a start-up diesel generator in outback Australia, for example. So it's not. There are opportunities at all points of the risk spectrum across the renewable and across the green investment horizon. If, for example, you want to think about an investment in unproven technologies, emerging technologies, say in renewable energy, then my advice would be, one, to have great expertise, but two, to do it on a highly diversified basis, so that you don't back a single startup technology just because there's some smart talker. And there's plenty of them. There's thousands of them. And the US breeds them at an incredible rate. And most people lose their money in those. So you need to diversify. You need to be spread across a whole lot of startup technologies if you're going to go into that area. As you move down the risk spectrum to more established type operations, obviously you can take bigger single bets with some equanimity.
Helga, I think your concern might be that, having heard the alacrity with which we took up the suggestions and have agreed and adopted them as policy, that you'll come back and read our annual report in 12 months' time and find we've done nothing. And maybe one way we can assuage this fear of yours is we can look at our passive equity program both domestic and global, and very quickly, with the help of our consultant, identify some ways of either enhancing the portfolio or diminishing it by removing stocks that will show we have a clear commitment to this program.